the Director of Elections and Government at the Brennan Center for Justice, Daniel Weiner. Daniel, so good to see you. You have said that the committee's investigation is the most consequential congressional investigation in decades. So what's the biggest revelation for you so far?
Well, first of all, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. And I think that the biggest revelation really is that this was, and this is from the first three hearings, and the picture is coming to place, this was an intentional effort to overturn the will of the American people and really deal a body blow to our democracy. And what we saw from the first two hearings is that they knew they had lost the election. The president knew, President Trump, the people around him knew that they had lost the election. And the picture that really came out from this third hearing is also that the lawyer who was driving this effort knew that what they were doing was illegal, that that this was an illegal effort to overturn the will of the American people. And I think at this point, that picture is crystal clear.
So with that said, will any of these innermost circle of advisors be held accountable for what they knew? Because if Trump can escape any kind of accountability, his advisors sure can, right?
Well, that's a great question. And I think we need to think about what these hearings are for. So if you look back at the great congressional investigations of the past, Watergate, those sorts of investigations, certainly criminal accountability was an important factor. And that, will be for prosecutors, judges, and juries ultimately to decide. But I certainly think calls for criminal investigations are understandable and they will proceed, I think, in due course. But there is a broader public accountability that we cannot lose sight of, that, we need to repudiate what was one of the most serious attacks on our democracy in a century. And that means perhaps criminal investigations, but that also means a broader shared understanding that this was unacceptable and a repudiation of this as kind of a legitimate, political tactic. And that will be, I think, and this is what we have written, the ultimate measure of the success of these hearings.
All right, so we'll dig into that in just a second. So bottom line here is this really isn't about throwing Trump in the slammer, because the odds of that happening are pretty slim to none. But it comes down to protecting our vote as citizens, whether we are a Democrat or Republican. That really is what this is about as we move forward, correct?
Yeah, I think that was beautifully put, actually, and I think that's right. And I don't want to minimize the justified calls for a more concrete form of accountability for certain bad actors, and that includes the former president. But I think you're exactly right. Ultimately, the reason we are doing this and the reason this is so important is to protect the American system of government and American democracy going forward. And I don't think the answer to that can just be asking who's going to go to jail. I think it has to be a broader conversation.
And you actually wrote in your piece that I read this morning that it's critical for Congress to facilitate a thorough public reckoning with the full scope and severity of the attack on our nation's democratic institutions so that it is thoroughly repudiated, as you just said, and can never happen again. So let me ask you this, Daniel. How would you advise Congress to do that? How should they lay out the groundwork here to protect the will of the people?
Well, I think that the first thing Congress needs to do, and I think they are doing this very well, is that they need to establish the truth, and they need to establish it in an incontrovertible way. I think it is very smart that you have a member of the opposing party, one of the leading members of the opposing party in Congress until recently at least, really driving this investigation. And this is something you haven't seen before, even in the great investigations like Watergate. And you also have a very ideologically diverse staff. The main questioner yesterday was a leading Republican lawyer, and that was both extraordinary and I think warranted. So Congress needs to use this process to establish the truth, and then move to a reckoning not only with what happened on January 6th, which was not an isolated event, but also with the ongoing threat to our elections, both in the 2024 midterms, 2022 midterms, and the 2024 general election. Ultimately, I think it'll be very important to both deal with the immediate threat of election sabotage that continues across the country, and then also over the long term, really start to explore what guardrails can we put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Right. And you said it perfectly. Name the threats and block them so no further elections can be sabotaged in any way. Daniel Weiner, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And for more, you can turn into This Week for an exclusive interview with January 6th committee member Congressman Adam Kinzinger. That's going to be this Sunday in the morning here on ABC.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.